there it goes. Hopefully. All right, awesome. It just did it. It gave me an error message just now. That's so weird. It just basically makes my life easier if I can do it this way. Wouldn't be the end of the world, but okay, and welcome everybody to Tips for a Successful NaNoWriMo. I'm going to introduce myself in just a second here, but I also just want to say a quick thing to Megan here. If you could keep an eye on the waiting room, that would really help me, because when I'm presenting, I get a little, clearly cannot multitask. I'm going to share my screen so that everybody can see my slides. Super excited about today. I love NaNoWriMo. Everybody knows this. And if you don't know, now you do. I just, before I get started, I just want to say a little bit about it. I owe so much of my writing career to NaNoWriMo, and I think that's why I love it so much. And it's because in the early days, I didn't have the confidence to write a whole novel. And I had my two critique partners told me about NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, and I decided to give it a shot. I was in my MFA program and I had to write a thesis. Basically, we had to do two things. One was a technical thesis, the other was a creative thesis. And the creative thesis was you had to write half of a novel, 25,000 words. I just remember thinking, like, how am I going to do that? Like, I don't know how to write a novel, and I'd only written short stories, so I was really intimidated by that. And I decided to give NaNoWriMo a shot just to be able to try writing a novel and, like, getting my thesis done. And the rest is history. I pretty much participated every year since then. I think the first year I participated was either 2010 or 2011. So I've been participating for a while now. I've won at least 7 times. Sometimes I've made the decision to not win. Like, I knew going in I wasn't going to write 50,000, but I was just going to write to be part of it, which I'll talk about a little more as we get through this presentation. But I feel like I learn something about myself every time I do Nano. And I highly recommend it for anybody, any writer who wants to try their hand at writing a novel, wants to get writing done in general. Maybe you've written several novels and you need to fast draft something. Maybe you just want to get some writing done in general. NaNoWriMo is the way to go. All right, let me just go through this here. So for anybody who doesn't know me, I think everybody on here does, but for the folks who will watch this after the fact, a little bit about me. I'm the founder here at Writers Atelier. I also am the founder and editor at Black Box Literary Magazine, and I'm the editor-in-chief over at Voyage YA. And then below that, those are some of my titles. I just really love writing, as you can see. I love writing and I love helping writers. So that's basically where my two sections of my career kind of cross, right? I love helping writers and I also love writing. All right, so let's get into NaNoWriMo. The goal of NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, is to write 50,000 words in 30 days. Now, this is the goal, right? The original intent of the whole thing, right? However, if you feel like 50,000 words might be biting off more than you can chew, then don't do 50,000 words. Set a goal that you feel comfortable with, right? So 1 year, I worked on multiple projects because I was going to be putting out novelettes. I like to write shorter stories, novelettes and novellas. And I decided to write multiple things. And that same year, I believe Megan did the same thing. We were both NaNoWriMo rebels. And actually, Megan has a really great tracker. If you decide to do multiple projects, we have that resource on our site. If you cannot find it, we can always, you can message us and we'll send it to you. But you can do that, or you can write short stories. We've had people come into the studio space when we were doing in-person ones, and they would write poems. They were poets, and they would write a poem a day or a couple poems a day. So you don't have to necessarily write 50,000 words if you don't want to. Now, technically, if you go to the NaNoWriMo website, right, and you are entering in how many words you're writing and all that, you're not going to be classified as like winning, right? But that's, to me, that's just really a piece of paper, right? It's just a little, it's a thing just to say that, you wrote 50,000 words. You can set your goal and be successful at the goal that you feel comfortable with. So that's just something to keep in mind. I love Nano for the spirit, the camaraderie, the energy, right? Now, we have, oh, and thank you, Megan, for putting the tracker there in the comments. You can sign up for NaNoWriMo at the website there. I would strongly suggest signing up, creating your username, mainly because I like to log in and actually track my progress. I'm going to talk about the whole purpose of tracking your progress later on, but that's what I like to use the NaNoWriMo website for. But there are other resources there. They've got all their articles linked, and you can go into your region. You can attach yourself to the region that you're from, and you can get involved in the local community. And most regions have various events listed, so they'll keep track of all the NaNoWriMo events that different people are putting on near you. And you can also friend people. You can have your buddies. And during Nano also has a camp session, I think 2 times a year. One is like spring, the other summer. And they call it Camp NaNoWriMo, and you can have cabins with people and stuff like that. So it's a cool website. My main purpose, though, for using it is the tracking part, because I like to track my progress. So sign up. That's the first thing you probably want to do. And then some of the benefits of NaNoWriMo. Again, I've talked a little bit about what Nano meant to me and how I feel like it's so responsible for, it's a big part of my initial career as a writer. I don't know that I would have been able to attempt a novel without it, maybe, but it certainly helped. It eased me into it. But some of the benefits of NaNoWriMo. Writing routine, right? You can establish a writing routine. That's one of the things that helped me do, right? And it also kind of helps you schedule yourself, right? So I remember in those early days, I was working when I first started doing Nan. I was working at a law firm as a receptionist, and obviously I worked a 9 to 5. But my 9 to 5 was a little flexible. It was like 3 days out of the week, 9 to 5, and then I would add a day if needed. But essentially, that was a place I had to be on certain days for a certain amount of hours. So obviously, on those days, I was not in control of my writing schedule as much as I would have liked to be. And so, I didn't have the freedom to just write whenever. So I used my lunch breaks, and I would get there. I had this weird thing about parking spaces. I would get to work early so I could get my parking spot. Because I didn't like when other people parked in my parking spot, so I would arrive early. Megan's shaking her head because she knows this is so me. I cannot help it. It's just the way I am. I want to park in the same spot every day. And I claim things as my own, even though it's a public parking space. But I would arrive early so that I could get my parking spot. And I would arrive like an hour early. I know that's wild, but that's what I did. And so that hour I would use to write. So I'd have this hour to write before work, have my lunch break, and then I would have, if I had any left, I would write when I got home from work. And that actually helped me breaking it down, because essentially you're writing 1667 words per day. That's really what it breaks down to. That can feel intimidating, but if you break that up throughout the day, and not everybody prefers to do this, but that helps me, like the way my brain is wired, it helps me because it feels like I'm not writing this big intimidating number if I were to just take it in chunks. I think I did something like 500, 500, and then the rest I would write, at the end of the day. And that helps. It also teaches you discipline, right? Because if you don't have discipline, you will end up with a huge pile of words that you have to write to catch up, right? So you do have to have a level of discipline to do NaNoWriMo. And I like that it teaches you that. If you didn't have it before, it can teach you that. It also gives you some accountability because, again, you're trying to write this book and, or, whatever it is you've set out to write. And you've got to figure out how to stay accountable, right? You're supposed to write every day during Nano. Supposed to, I say. Talk about that a little more. But it does give you a level of accountability because, again, everybody around you is doing it too. And it feels like, oh, Megan just finished her word count for today. My friend Megan, I've got to finish mine too, right? So it does give you a level of accountability. It also holds you to deadlines, whichever deadline that you set. Some people don't like to write every day and they'll do a big chunk of words on certain days. So it teaches you how to hold true to deadlines. It also teaches you focus. Again, I mentioned, I had those sessions morning, afternoon, and evening to write. I only have a certain amount of time, right? In those sessions where I'm at work, like I only had the hour, I only had the lunch break. The lunch break was an hour as well. I have to be really focused. I can't, be on my phone looking at Insta, scrolling Facebook, whatever. TikTok wasn't a thing back then, but now it is, right? We've got lots of distractions. So, but when you have a set amount of time to do something and you're busy, but you've got to get this word count in, it can teach you some focus. And of course, one of my favorite benefits, gaining writing friends. I have met so many wonderful people through NaNoWriMo. Actually, Megan is one of them. Megan came into the studio for a NaNoWriMo session and lucky for us stayed. So many wonderful friendships have come out of it. I've even met people online that eventually later on connected with in person. And I just absolutely cannot say enough great things about the community part of it. So those are just some benefits. Now, the next thing to keep in mind, I wouldn't be me unless I talked about mindset, right? The mindset part of it. As you all know, I'm very woo-woo. And if you don't know now you do. But first things first, keep calm because it's only a draft. It is a first draft. And again, that was one of the things that helped me release all that pressure, the first NaNoWriMo that I did. Because again, I was very much intimidated by the novel and writing a full-length novel. But when I thought about it in these terms, like, okay, this is a first draft. I'm just getting things down on the page and nobody has to see this draft at all. I'm just going to write and I'm not going to worry about it. You've got to try your hardest to get out of your head. I know that's hard as a writer because we want to find the perfect words and make sentences shine and glow. But really, the first draft really isn't the time for that. We're trying to get the words on the page. We can always go back and find those perfect words and get those glowing sentences, right? So keep calm, it's just a draft. Next thing to do is actually believe that you can write a novel in 30 days, right? Because if you don't have the belief then it's going to be very difficult to achieve the goal. It has to be something that you believe you can do. And I know it's really easy to get caught up in it and just to say, you know, that just seems like too much to do in a month. Like, I just cannot. Really easy to do that. But it's possible, right? Look at all the writers throughout all the years of NaNoWriMo who have finished drafts, right? Like, it is possible. It can be done, but you have to believe that you're able to actually do it. And I know that's very difficult, but I promise you it's possible. And all you really have to do is, one, believe, and then two, follow through with the action. All right. So one thing I suggest doing, and I think all of this is part of the mindset, right? What are you excited to write? The project has to be something that you are excited about. If you're writing something that you are not excited about, you are honestly upping your chances of failure. That's just how it is. You're not going to want to get up and sit in the chair, right, and get behind the desk, or I suppose the notebook. You're not going to want to do those things if you're not writing something you're passionate about and excited. So I would always say, try to pick something that you're going to be excited about. And I'm going to be honest. I have started Nano where I thought I was excited about a project, and as I was going through, I was not excited about the project anymore. You know what I did? I switched projects. But I still counted that as my word count. I just used the same document. And I was like, because I'm very like compartmentalized, what I did was I took that same initial document that I started. I went into a new document, started the new project, and then every day I would just dump the words over into that initial one. So I still kept them separate so I wouldn't be confused, but like I knew like this is the one I'll use to enter into the Nano site, because those words still count. Okay, those words still count. So you can switch projects halfway through if you don't feel like, you know, you're passionate anymore. And maybe you've even gotten a new idea like while you were writing. That's the beauty of Nano. I like it. I like to personally use it as a way to explore things. In 2013, when I did it, that project is my basically book of my heart project, the one that got me my agent and all that stuff. That 2013 project, I had never written YA, and I was wanting to try my hand at YA, and I used it to do that. I used NaNoWriMo to explore that. So you can use it as a way to explore, you know, what you want to do and try new things. Then you can decide if you want to do one project or multiple. As I said before, I did multiple projects 1 year. Megan's done that before. There are lots of people who do that. They do, you know, the multiple projects and total them up to 50,000. So you can do that. It's just whatever, again, you feel called to write, whatever you feel most passionate about. Write what lights you up, which is the next point. Focus on the projects that light you up. Because that's going to help ensure success. All right. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the word count, because I think sometimes, you know, again, our brains are wired differently. I said before that it helped me to think of this, like to break down that 1667 words into different sessions. Something about those smaller numbers just works and, you know, resonates in my brain. Might not be the case for everybody. Some people are like, nope, I like to just think of it in one big chunk, and then that's it, I go. I like to do it all in one shot. So traditionally, right, NaNoWriMo is 1667 words a day, but you can do longer or shorter chunks. And I want to just talk a little bit about that, kind of give you some numbers so you can see. And maybe one of these will resonate with you. I didn't go through all the possible number combinations you know, that can exist, but you'll get the idea from here, and maybe even, you know, come up with something else that works for you. But what word count schedule will you follow? So again, thinking in different terms may help. Weekly, the goal is 11,669 words. So 1667 times 7 days is 11,669, right? So thinking about it like that might help you, right? Like, okay, by the end of the week, I need to have this amount, right? These 11,000 words. That's where I need to be, and it might feel more manageable. And then you can divide that, the 11,669 words, into what works for your schedule. Maybe on your days off, you can write more, right? And you can spend hours working on your manuscript. Maybe on the days that you have to work, right? You've got a big chunk of the day taken up by work, so you have to break that down into smaller word counts, right? So think about it in different numbers and see what works for you. Another thing, now this one to me is, I put it in here because again, I think it could resonate depending on how your brain is wired. But for me, this one is a bit, this is a little bit overwhelming. But if you think, you can think of it in even 5-day increments. So from the 1st to the 5th, you're supposed to be at 8,335 words. 6th to the 10th, right? You're at 16,670 and so forth. I'm not going to go through all of those, but you get the point. So you can think of it in 5-day increments if you want. You can also work it out to like, okay, Thanksgiving weekend is not going to work, right? Like you got to be with family, you got all these things. Personally, for me, November is like the busiest month because it's Hallmark Christmas movie season, number one. But also my birthday is in November. My mother's birthday is the same day as mine. So it's my mother's birthday. Then I have Thanksgiving, right? So there's a lot of stuff. It's holiday time. Like there's so much going on in November for me personally. I'm also usually releasing a Christmas book. So even if I don't release that month, I'm promoting that month. So it's a really busy month for me. So if you want to think of it, you can always break down the word count, subtract, add up the amount of words for that weekend that you would need to write, and then build them into your word count on other days. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about prepping. Things to consider prepping: your plot and your outline, right? And your structure. So this is not necessarily going to work for everybody. I've done NaNoWriMo before where I didn't do a darn thing. I literally, on the day of NaNoWriMo, day one, I just started. I didn't even think about the idea before, nothing. I just started, like, let's go. So I've done that and I won that year. So you can totally go, whatever. And I have a slide about that too. But if you are somebody who's a little panicked about succeeding, plotting ahead of time might help you. And you don't have to go into these elaborate plots. You can just simply do like a chapter outline. So, like just a basic idea of what happens in each chapter. Or even just write down, some major plot points. But there are a ton of structures that you can follow in terms of plotting. I know Megan really likes it's plot embryo, right? There's a 4-act structure. That's Amy Christine Parker's favorite. There's, you do 3 acts. For romance writers, Romancing the Beat is fantastic. So finding, basically what works for you here is the goal. Another thing to consider is to flesh out your characters. So doing character sketches ahead of time, or even doing those character interviews that you see online where you can ask a bunch of questions about your character. Just exploring the character ahead of time can help save time while you're writing, because you kind of know I really also think that Melanie Harlow had suggested the emotion thesaurus, the one with the wound, emotional wound one, that it would be great, because then you could kind of already have, you know, what exactly are the pain points of your character ahead of time. Also, prepping your world or your setting, especially if you're writing something like fantasy, is always a good idea. And then creating your character goals per scene is also good, so you don't have these scenes that kind of fall flat, or you don't know what to do with, or you don't know where it's going and what direction, and that could potentially stop you from writing, right, if you sort of get lost. And I will take this opportunity to say we have a prepping session next weekend with Megan. So these things that I'm talking about here, those are good things to work on during the prep session, right? Because you could sit for a few hours, and I believe it's broken down into 2 sessions, but you can sit for hours and sort of just have the focus on fleshing out parts of the story, so that you're not flailing around, I suppose, when you're actually writing it. Also consider prepping your research. The reason I'm talking about this is because I have done it where I did not do any research before, and then I'm like, I really need research. I cannot do the rest of this because I don't have the research. I don't know exactly how this works. So I would say try to do at least some of the research before. And the reason why you want to prep research too is because a lot of the times you fall down rabbit holes. I'm sure as writers, you all are familiar with that. But I've done that too, where I'm like, I'm gonna stop and do some research, and then I fall down a rabbit hole, and now I'm going on this research spiral when I should be getting words on the page. And again, that could set you back, right? If you're taking too much time researching, then it could set you back. So research is something that you want to consider prepping before. Another thing to consider is to brainstorm some conflicts related to your story in case you get stuck. So again, in the prepping session, this is a good idea. You can sit and do this, you know, think of any kind of conflict that could happen for your characters, in your story. And that's why I guess it's good to have a loose, at least plot idea, because I think it would be a little difficult to brainstorm the conflict if you didn't have, you know, a general idea of where the story is going. All right. Okay. Thanks for those links, Megan. Now here's my favorite, or don't prep. Pantser all the way, you know, and I've done that too. Again, I think it's kind of fun to do it that way, but just be okay with messy drafts, right? Because if you do it this way, your draft is going to be messier. Because again, you're just sort of writing with the wind. Now, again, I like this because for me, it just feels like total freedom, right? To just write. And that's one of the reasons I fell in love with writing, because it felt like freedom. So maybe that's something you need to try if you feel like you've been doing nano and you haven't been successful at it. And by successful, I mean, like, you know, hitting the 50K. You might try just pantsing it and seeing what happens, because there's something freeing about it. It's just writing whatever, you know. And I love it, but again, you've got to be comfortable with that messy draft. You're going to have a messy draft at the end. And one strategy that I like to use, which is like, it's pantsing, but it's also like partially planning, but in my head. I will, if I'm doing it this way, like when I sit down to write, I'll think about what needs to happen next in the chapter. So I'll say to myself, okay, here are the things I wrote about yesterday. These are the things that happened. What needs to happen next? And then I'll kind of think in my head about what, literally what scenes I want to come onto the page next and what needs to happen in them. So that's a way to approach it if you are doing it that way. And I know a lot of people have a hard time with that, but again, I find it freeing. And sometimes what I'll even do is I'll write the chapter, and then I'll think in my head when I get done writing for the day, I'll say, okay, what needs to happen next? And then I'll put that at the end of the session. So when I go back, I kind of already know, and I don't have to like waste time, right? Like flailing around, well, too much anyways. So that helps me. So maybe if you pants it, that might help you. I love these terms, if you pants it. All right, so some things that might help you stay organized with your prep. Trello, I swear by Trello. It's a project management tool. And again, with project management tools, I think you just need to find the one that works with your brain. Not all of them are going to resonate with everyone. I don't know why Trello does. It really just does for me. And I'm actually hoping to do a video on that this month to put up how I use it for planning my writing projects, because actually, I don't like plotting, but I've been forced to. So just disclaimer, but I've used it to plot out stories before. And I've also used it to schedule writing because it has calendar integration. Like you will get a Google Calendar reminder when something is due. So I would use it to schedule what writing projects I needed to get done. So for example, I'd say at one point I was working on a screenplay and a middle grade novel. And on Mondays, I kind of just I was like, Mondays are just gonna be my writing day because I have to get this stuff done. So I would set like, okay, I need to have this many pages of the script due today. And then I need to have this chapter is due today of the middle grade novel. And then I would schedule that in Trello onto the calendar. And then Google would alert me right on my phone and on my computer, hey, pages 10 to whatever of the script are due, and chapter 7 of the novel is due. So I like it for that. And then you can like check off things on there too. They're like checklists. I really love it. Notion is another really great one. I think Notion is absolutely brilliant. However, it is very complicated, and my brain initially responded to it. And now my brain is not. I'm like, oh my God, it's too much. But Megan loves Notion, and I think it's a really great tool if that's how your brain works. Angelique loves ClickUp. I personally don't like ClickUp, but again, that's what her brain responds to. Asana is another one. So just finding the right ones. I think another one with an M, but I can't. Yeah, but just find one that works for you, and they can help you. And I like digital stuff because obviously you can have it on your phone and you can take it with you on the go, so you don't have to worry about not having access. Spreadsheets, good old-fashioned spreadsheets work. Google Drive and Dropbox, your phone, like in the Notes app, you can organize things now pretty nicely in Apple Notes, I know. So that might be good. And then just a good old-fashioned notebook. It's a really great one. Actually, Megan made a really great video on YouTube. I keep referencing, we have a lot of resources, y'all. But Megan made a really fantastic video on our YouTube about organizing your notebook, and even making it so that, like, if you're writing in pen, for example, like, you don't have to worry because you can just like remove a sticky note. You have to check it out to see all the stuff she did with it, but it was a really good video. The good old-fashioned notebook works just fine, and you don't even have to do all the fancy stuff that Megan does, but notebooks are great. And then our novel planner, and Megan actually put the link up, by the way, for that video in the chat if you were interested. Our novel planner is also really fantastic. I know a lot of our community likes it. We actually just did a little redesign of it. Well, it got a refresh. And there are a couple new things in it. So that'll be up next week. I just sent over the draft to Megan, so it should be up by next week. And if you don't see it, just look out in the community for it, because we'll post it there. But it's a nice kind of thing to print out too, if you're into like printing, tactile things. And then if you're watching this on YouTube after, we will link when we have it up, we will link it in the notes, the notes description, etc., whatever it's called. All right, so one of the big keys to success is to track your progress. I talked a little about tracking before. I know this sounds wild, but actually the visual representation of your track, of your progress, it does something to your brain, right? And the more that builds, the more excited you get, and even your confidence increases when you start to see that progress adding up and accumulating. So it's really important to track. And I've noticed that I kind of went back and reflected on all the years of doing Nano, and I noticed, now there were 2 years where just like things I knew from the start I wasn't gonna be able to finish it because of, like last year was my health, right? So I knew there were two years where, off top, those weren't gonna work for me. But the years where I set out to win and didn't, I did not track. I didn't track consistently. And that puts you off track. Hence the reason it's tracking, right? So I strongly suggest, figuring out a way to track, but you could log on to the Nano site and just plug in every day your word count. That's probably the easiest. And but if you don't like the Nano tracker, you can use Pacemaker. Lots of writers use that. I will say, I think there's a free version and there's also paid versions of it. So, it might not work for everyone depending on, budgets and all that stuff, but a lot of people use Pacemaker and like it. WriteTrack is another one. And I've never used any of these. These are just ones that I've heard of and my writer friends swear by. The NaNoWriMo tracker works fine for me. WriteTrack is another one. And the good thing about, by the way, these outside trackers is that obviously you can use this beyond NaNoWriMo. Spreadsheets are really great. And then also a regular calendar. I went on, I did a whole year of where I was writing every single day. And the way I tracked it, every day I sat down with my calendar and I wrote the word count for the day. And seeing that again accumulate across the calendar, when you get to a certain point of doing that and the habit forms, you don't want to mess it up, right? You want it to keep going and you want to keep seeing it. It's just how our human brains work. So once you stop doing that, though, it honestly puts you off track because you're not seeing the visual representation anymore. So it's almost like your brain forgets about it. So whatever way you decide, just track, right? However you want to do it, but just track your progress. That's kind of also why we say inside the Write Gym to write down your goals every week, right? Even if it's, I always suggest actually physically writing it down, but even if you're putting it in the gym, right, and you're seeing it there, it's still a visual representation. So track. All right, how to maximize your time. Basically, what you're going to do is get rid of the fluff, right? So that means silencing your cell phone, for example, when you're in writing sessions, because that is a distraction. Limiting TV and extracurriculars. That's a hard one for me because it's Hallmark Christmas season. But limiting, right? Again, these are all distractions that you're trying to take away. It's not that you can't watch TV after. It could even be your reward, right? Or you can't do extracurriculars. But a lot of the times, and I'm going to talk about that in a second here, like you're going to have to make some adjustments to get this done. So one way to think of it too is like, well, it's just 30 days, right? You're just sort of shaping and molding your life to fit into this project, right? And it's just 30 days. After 30 days, you could do something else, right? Also using a timer of some sort, or using like the Pomodoro method is really great, because again, that will help you focus. And last, do not edit. I repeat, do not edit. Do not edit. I know it's very tempting, and especially if you forgot what you wrote the day before, and you want to go back to read it to figure out where you're going, and you find things. But I promise you, editing, it's a separate, try to think of it as a separate process. You are drafting your book, all right? Do not edit. You can edit later. And again, I know that's hard. If you're someone who struggles with that, I would actually suggest at the end of your writing session, just doing a couple bullet points of what you wrote, so that way you remember where you are in the story, and just move forward. So that way you don't have to go back and read what you wrote and then get potentially caught up in that editing spiral. So do not edit. I repeat, do not edit. All right, let's talk a little bit about preparing your life, because preparing your life is just as important, right? As preparing your manuscript. So I say this every year, I know, but I'm going to say it again. You start setting those boundaries with your family, your friends, your coworkers. Every person that is close to me in my life knows that when November rolls around, Racquel is focused on Racquel and Racquel's writing, okay? I do a lot of things throughout the year for other writers. It's part of my job as an editor, writing coach, and I'm always concerned about writers, right? And how do I move them forward? How do I help them? But November is Racquel season, and I am writing. I'm not focused. I don't take on any clients typically. Occasionally in the past few years, there've been clients who just like really needed certain things, and I did take them on, but they were all previous clients. Like I don't do any new clients or anything like that during the month of November, because I'm writing my stuff. So my family knows, don't talk to me. And I say that with lots of love. I don't mean it in a rude way. It's like, it's become like a little bit of a joke, don't talk to me. But everybody knows that's what I do. And then and it's because I've set that boundary. I don't want to, with the exception of obviously Thanksgiving time, that's family time, but with the exception of that and my birthday, the rest of the month I'm writing, and I don't want to do anything. I don't want to go anywhere. I'm not going to any events besides those, and I set that boundary, and everybody knows and has, like, the expectation is there, and nobody's offended because I've set it up that way. So don't be afraid to just kind of even sit with your family, tell them this is what you want to do, and ask for the support, and the space that you need. Also just say no. That's a hard one again, because like I said, I had clients where I'm like, okay, fine. But try to say no. It's just, you can't do everything. And it's just for this month. It's just for this month that you're kind of taking these extreme, right? You're making these extreme adjustments. But with Nano, there has to be a level of sacrifice. And it's true, honestly, for any goal that you want to complete, there's going to be a level of sacrifice that you need to make. And that means saying no to things that aren't writing related. So that's a hard one. I know that that's a hard one, and especially with family, and people have kids, right? You've got people who have like, their immediate families and things like that. I understand that. And those things, obviously, you have to, like, you can't say, you can't be like, I'm not going to take care of you, child. You can't say those things, right? But is there a way that you could maybe, get your kids involved? Like maybe when you're writing in your session, like they can be writing a story too, right? And so it's like a time where everybody in the family is writing. There are ways to get a little bit creative, right? And what I really mean by saying no is honestly to things that aren't really, in the grand scheme of things, important, and it is important to connect with other people, but like, I'm not going to probably go out for coffee with my friend that month just because I'm like, I'm writing. So I'll go out coffee with you in December, or, whatever month following. So just, be mindful of that, and, try to say no as much as you can if it's something that can wait. All right. Also think ahead. So what will make your life easier? So for example, grocery shopping, right? And doing those kinds of things ahead of time. Obviously, you can't buy all of your groceries, right? Because some items will spoil. Are there things you can kind of buy and have ready during that month, right? Is there a way to meal prep even? And you could even meal prep, like you could pick a certain date. I know it doesn't seem like it saves time, but you could pick a certain date every week. And that's the day that you kind of like meal prep, make all of your meals and stuff, and then have them ready, for the next few days so that you don't have to scramble when you're trying to concentrate on writing. Honestly, when I lived by myself, I ate a lot of frozen food. I have frozen food in the freezer because that was easy, right? And I didn't have to think about it, and I didn't have to stand at the stove and make it, so it was easy for me to do that. One of my favorite things to say, and I know y'all have heard me say it before, but wrapping your laundry. Not gonna lie, I have like 30 pieces of underwear, so I don't have to worry about laundry. Like those are things, I know that sounds wild, and it's like we laugh about it, but it's true, right? Like if you could, if that's something that you can kind of do ahead of time, that's helping you save time, right? I have like a million, I pretty much live in pajamas and like yoga pants. I have like a million Christmas pajamas. So, if there are things that can make your life easier, then this is really what the point of this is. Clearing your calendar. I'm usually running around like chicken with their head cut off in October, because I'm like, I gotta get all this stuff done so I don't have to worry about it, for November. I'm always constantly in October trying to see how much I can get done so that November I can have as much time as possible freed up to write. And also prepping your supplies. So thinking ahead about your, laptop. Is it charged up, for example, the day that you have to write, and you're taking your because I would take my laptop with me to work for that hour in the morning. I had to make sure it's like charged up, or at least I have the charger with me. How are you going to save your stuff? I've also learned from experience that, flash drives aren't reliable. And I'll tell you why. I've had two instances. One, during Nano, I was writing with my laptop on my lap, and my flash drive was plugged in. My computer fell off my lap onto the flash drive, and the flash drive smashed into a million pieces. And guess what? Racquel lost 13,000 words. So, I still won. By the way, I still won that year. But that was a struggle. Okay. That was a lesson learned. And then I had another instance, it wasn't during Nano, where I didn't know that flash drives go bad. Yes, people, flash drives can go bad. And so I had all my stuff stored on a flash drive, and then the flash drive just it died. So I lost a lot of stuff. To just, be mindful. Like, I started with Nano, what I started doing was emailing myself. So like, it's backed up on the cloud. It's also emailed to myself, and it's backed up on like 2 clouds. Okay, so just be thinking about that, because I don't want the same thing to happen to you. Be thinking about how you want to store your stuff and save it. And you should, when that happened to me, Megan said, your stuff should be backed up. Important things at least should be backed up in 3 places. And ever since then, I've heard that phrasing like all over. And it's all from tech people. Like, people, like, even if a writer says it, they're like, oh, a tech person told me this. I think it was your father, Megan, that initially brought that up. But it should be back. If it's important, you should back it up in 3 places. I promise you, you'll thank me later. Also, like organizing folders and things like that, knowing where all your NaNoWriMo stuff is great. And again, the project management tools can help with that too. Pens, we got to have our nice pens. We as authors most of us, I think, have a favorite pen, or like a favorite kind or brand of pen. My favorite, just side note, is the Precise V5 rolling ball, fine point, extra fine. That's my favorite pen. So, having those around with my notebook, because sometimes I do like jot stuff down. Like, if I have an idea really quick, I'll jot something down, especially if I'm working during the day. And I have an idea for something in the story, I'll jot it down. So having all of your supplies available and ready and near you ahead of time will help. And I would also suggest even putting those, if you're on the go, having like a NaNoWriMo bag, and you can have all your stuff in it. All right. All right, so what if you get stuck? Because I think this is one of the things that make people drop off, getting stuck. So I'm gonna be very transparent. It will most likely happen. There's gonna be a point, because your brain is honestly working overtime to produce these, that many words a day, especially if you're not used to that. But the key to getting unstuck is actually being prepared. And now what do I mean by prepared? I mean, again, this is going to require some thinking ahead, but some of it is. One thing you could do is write out of order. So if you get stuck somewhere, just move to the next thing, write a different chapter. Now, again, this one will probably depend on how your brain is wired. My brain has a hard time with this because I am very, like, my brain is very linear. And I'm like, I need to write this in order. I need to see the sequence of events happening. Perhaps that is because I don't plot. But if you plot, right, you could probably write out of order, right? But it's still a really great strategy to use if you get stuck, right? You can just kind of move to the next thing. A lot of friends I know like to write their ending first. One thing even that helps, like, it depends on the genre you're writing, but like mystery writers, for example, I wrote a mystery a couple of years ago, co-wrote it with a friend, and we had to know the ending, because it was almost like with writing a mystery, we were working backwards. But we could have easily written, we didn't, but we could have easily written the ending first. So if you have stuff sort of plotted out ahead of time, that might be a good strategy for you. Also, trying to write every day, even if it's a little bit, even if you don't hit that word count, if you don't hit the 1667, just a little bit every day so that it doesn't pile up too much, right? Just, when you don't feel like it, just sit at your desk and say, I'm gonna write 500. I'm just trying to write 500. And if I can't write beyond that, I'll call it a day. But in a lot of instances, when you just even try to tackle the little bit, you might wind up producing more because you might even get into a groove. Sometimes it's really a matter of just pushing past that initial resistance to sit down and write the words. So try to write a little bit each day, even, if you're not hitting word counts, just do a little every day. Attend free write-ins. They're going to be happening across Central Florida. I believe some people are going back to in-person. Ours are going to be all online again, but we'll have our free ones like we always do. So just take advantage of doing those free write-ins because it's a great way to kind of sit down, get the butt in the chair, and have friends also doing it alongside you. I would also say use placeholders in your text. So like even just, if you can't think of something, you could put in something like in lots of cases, I can't think of a name and that might trip me up. I don't know what I want to name this thing or this person. I'll just put it in a bracket or parentheses and it'll say, don't, or come back to this, name the character or name the place or whatever it is. So a lot of writers like to use that technique. I think Megan uses it too. But placeholders can be good because then you don't have to like sit there and feel stuck. You can kind of just move forward. Also prompts, and you can get prompts all over the place. Google, Pinterest, NaNoWriMo and NaNoLando. They're going to be, that's our region. They usually do tweet it, like on their Twitter account, they'll post, and I think their Facebook pages and such. And the main NaNoWriMo website as well, like headquarters, follow their Twitter as well, because they will post prompts. And then our November planner has one-word prompts to get you going for each day. And I like the one-word prompts because they are, wildly open to interpretation. They also have a special place in my heart because the first year I did Nano, I met a fellow participant online and I remember I tweeted out, I am just so stuck on this thing. I don't know what should happen next in this book. And the participant tweeted me and he said, here's a word for you to try to incorporate into your manuscript, granola. And I'll never forget that. Like even all these years later, I remember it. It was one word, and I had to figure out how to get to granola. Like I wasn't at a spot where I could just put granola in. I had to figure out a way to get to being able to add that word in. That's how the one-word prompts can be used, right? Because you have to figure out how to put it in there. And it made me I wrote a whole chapter. So one-word prompts are really great. But prompts in general can help you move the story forward. And then also participate in, those sprints and word wars, NaNoWriMo again, and NaNoLando, and probably your region, depending on where you're at, has those. I've done so many sprints and just been able to like accumulate, a good amount of words because the point is to like, you're being a little bit competitive, right? With whoever you're writing with. And you don't also want when the timer's over that you've only written like 10 words. So you're literally like, I'm just gonna write, and go with this. So I love the word sprints. And then you can also prep a list and have like a vision board of your ideas. Pinterest is really great for that. I also really like using Trello because in Trello, you can actually put all of your research, you can put in attachments and all that on the boards. And that way you can refer to those things if you get stuck. So like I still use Pinterest pretty much for visual purposes. And I'll just go to the board and like scroll through it and look at the images. And a lot of times that can spark an idea. I also would suggest creating like a list too of things you can just like tidbits you can like incorporate into the manuscript. So I was doing writing Christmas stories one year, as I mentioned, and I just made a list of like, heartwarming Christmas things and activities. So anytime I would get stuck, I'd go to that list, scroll through it, and a lot of the times, I think, oh, I can pluck this out and make a scene out of it. So that helps. And then phone a friend. Sometimes talking it out with a fellow writer can help and do you a world of wonder. Like it's a world of wonder. I've done that many a time. I also often ask my writer friends questions. Just yesterday, I asked Megan a bunch of questions. So it's, don't be afraid to lean on your community, right? Or even, and if you don't have somebody that's even like, that you could text or email or whatever that way, you can put it in groups and forums and have other writers help you that way, right? Anybody is welcome to reach out to us to ask questions. Yeah, in our online community, we don't have it turned on for everybody to just post. But I think what we'll do for Nano is we'll have specific posts so that people can just comment on them. We'll just say, hey, does anybody have any questions or anything they want to work through with NaNoWriMo? And then we'll put a post like that. So that way people can just each week continuously comment, throughout the week on that thread. And then now some tips for staying motivated, because your motivation is going to be tested. I promise. It is going to be tested because you get tired. It's a long, it starts feeling like a long month. And you're writing a lot of words, your brain's working overtime. But these are just some things that have helped me. Don't compare yourself, cheer. Okay? Don't compare, cheer. Meaning, don't look at the writer who said, I'm already at 10,000 words on day one. Nope, don't even, just celebrate that they've written 10,000 words. Give them a pat on the back, talk to them. That works for them. It may not work for you, right? You are going to continue on your track, right? And your course, because everybody has their own pace and their own course to take. So try not to compare yourself, just celebrate everybody's success. Stay connected to your community. So that means your region, the NaNoWriMo headquarters, and of course, Writers Atelier, because we are a community and we are very welcoming and we love cheering everybody on. But staying in touch with other writers who are doing this and continuously talking about it, right? And talking about your project helps you stay connected, all right? Next thing is to visualize, right? The end game. That might be something you consider prepping too, is like making a visual book cover, because sometimes seeing like, wow, this is what this could be, this is how it could end up, helps you want to keep working on something. So have a vision board, right, of you finishing the project at the finish line. Put your cover, a cover that you create, you can easily do that in Canva. Put your cover on your, that reminds me of a video idea, Megan. Like using visual representation for NaNoWriMo, like by doing a cover specifically in Canva. I'm just saying. That might be fun. But yeah, like having the visual representation can help you move the project forward and want to move the project forward. And again, I have it on here a second time, but track your word count and be sure to check in, right? I think most of the people actually in here are already in the right gym, but that's why we check in the right gym, because it, again, helps you stay accountable, right? So keep checking in. Remember to keep pushing yourselves to check in. Keep tracking, keep checking in. A word about self-care, because we need to be taking care of ourselves during this month. It's, again, very easy to just let everything fall by the wayside, but actually not taking care of yourself, right, deteriorates brain function and also body function, right? And then even it opens you up to be susceptible for other things like getting sick and all of that, right? If you're not taking care of yourself. So remember that NaNoWriMo is an intense month, but you don't have to burn yourself out, right? And again, ways to help burnout, right, is to prep as well. Prep as much as you can, life and the manuscript. So how to avoid burnout actually eats. I mentioned how to prep, your like meals and all that. That's that in advance. Sleep, because I know you're going to be tempted to write till the wee hours of the morning. And that's fine if you do it, once or twice, but like trying to sustain that for the whole month is probably not going to be very healthy. So just, try to get your sleep and also drink water. Don't forget to drink water. You can do that, while you're writing. So there's no excuse for the water. Have the bottle prepped ahead of time for writing sessions. Take breaks. Make sure you take breaks. Even if you're sprinting or you're doing a whole bunch of words in a day, make sure you set up breaks. Again, we all need them. We don't want to, again, burn ourselves out. So take breaks and then go outside or meditate and exercise. We have a fantastic class on-demand class on meditation and writing. So, and it's got sessions of like pre-recorded meditation specifically geared for writers. And there's the Calm app, I think is the name of it. That's another good one. There's lots of YouTube stuff too. We actually have free YouTube meditations as well. And it's also on our Instagram. So there are lots of resources out there for meditation. Meditation is really good because it can help reset your mind, right? And like re-energize your mind. I know that's also possibly quite woo-woo for some people, but I promise you, it really does help. So getting outside, getting physical activity helps as well. Another way to avoid burnout, stimulate your mind. Okay, so this can help with getting being stuck as well, but stimulating your mind by getting yourself involved in like activities that aren't writing can help. Books, I know that's technically writing related, but reading really helps. It honestly really helps me, especially if I'm reading in my genre. Christmas festivals, I had to say that one. Just because I'm usually writing like Christmas stuff. So going out and like being around the Christmas lights and everything helps stimulate my mind. And then art, right? Movies, music, all of those kinds of things can help with burnout. You might even consider prepping a playlist in advance. I also do that. The playlists help me with getting the mood of the characters and the story and so forth. All right, so this is my last slide here, but in the words of Winston Churchill, this is my favorite quote: never, never, never quit. At the end of the day, keep that in your mind. No matter what, you don't give up. Keep fighting, keep pushing, and don't quit. And again, it's not the end of the world if you don't hit 50K. All right, nobody is going to pass out. Nobody's going to die. It'll be fine. But if you are trying to hit 50K, right, and you really want to make a go at it, just keep pushing yourself forward and don't quit. Don't give up. Even if you fall behind, there's always a way to catch up. All right. So if anybody wants to stay in touch with us, those are all the places you can find us. This slide actually didn't really update, but we're also on TikTok loosely. So if you want to follow us there, you can. We're not as big on the TikTok, but we're there. We're there and we're getting our feet wet. So if that's your preference, you can find us there as well. Trying to post more there too, but I was figuring people may have questions. So if you want to ask anything or if you have any comments, now is the time. Hopefully this was helpful. These are just some of the things that have helped me, and I really loved, I really love Nano. I'm gonna stop sharing. No questions. I guess I was that thorough.
You were quite thorough. I loved it. Rebecca wanted me to tell you that she had to head out early, but to thank you for the presentation and that she's excited for Nano.
Yay!
Yay.
Well, this will be up on our YouTube, and we'll also post it. We'll post it in the community as well.
Right, in the network, right.
Once it's public.
Yeah. Yes, I have made lots of notes about that in particular.
Yay.
We had the same thought at the same time.
Oh, yay.
I'll think of questions later. Yay. Yay, Amy. Think of questions later. Okay. Yeah, I had the same thought about the Canva book cover for Nano at the same time you did. I was like, oh, do we recommend Nano or do we recommend Canva for book covers professionally? That's a you call.
Yeah.
Do we recommend them for fun? Oh yeah.
Totally. Although I will say, because I like a certain cover because of my writing background, right? Like I really like a hand-drawn cover because I really like I think of it as art. But also like I've seen some pretty good Canva covers. Like I've seen some good ones. So I mean, and Canva's just getting better and better. So
sponsor us, Canva. We love you. I said sponsor us, Canva.
Right. I also think like too with the Canva covers that it allows, because we know that in publishing there's a lot of privilege, right? And also even accessibility, like there's a lack of accessibility, and that makes it accessible for people to be able to tell their stories. And I support that. So all right. Well, if we don't have questions, we'll just wrap here.
Yeah. Oh, someone said to everyone, very helpful, always prepping my project, but this gave me a few things to think about. Yay.
Yay. I'm so glad. Awesome. Well, I am wishing everybody a very happy Preptober and also a very happy NaNoWriMo. It's a tongue twister. And let's all write the words, let's stay in touch. And I'm saying this too for folks watching after on YouTube. Join our free community because we've got a lot of free write-ins and free resources for everyone. And we're always happy to answer questions and weigh in and help anybody who needs help. So we'll post all of the links in the notes, but it's essentially writersatelier.mn.co. So yeah, hope to see. Oh, and don't forget about next week with Megan, the planning session.
Saturday, October 15th. It is from 11 p.m. to I think 5 p.m. We will be with a 2-hour break in between for meals and rest. We will be writing together like in sprints, prepping, and then ample breaks, kind of like a Pomodoro style, for people to come in and ask questions and not necessarily get advice, but for the whole party to kind of collaboratively work out any problems and kinks and stories people might be having.
All right. So next Saturday, hopefully we'll see some of you there. I think that's going to be fun. So
excited for it.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for coming and thanks for listening to me go on and on about NaNoWriMo, one of my favorite things. And if we're here for you if you need anything at all. And see you maybe next weekend, and if not, hopefully see you for NaNoWriMo. Have a good Sunday.